Welcome on behalf of my Deputy Convener and members of the committee and officers to this meeting, which has been held in Grangemouth Community Education Unit in Abbots Road, Grangemouth. In accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, it has been directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow remote attendance by elected members. The meeting will also be live streamed. That takes us into the business, and first of all, can I ask if there's any apologies?
Testing. Is that working now?
Hear you. Yeah.
Great. I'm seeing a thumbs up. Thank you, convener. Yes, we have apologies submitted by Councillor Colley.
Okay, thank you. Before we go into Okay, thank you very much for that. Before we go into the agenda business, I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Murtagh. Councillor Murtagh is, because of circumstances, is no longer a member of the committee, and I would just like to express my thanks for her because she did a tremendous job. She had great input in this committee, and I'm sure that everybody will take the opportunity to say thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. That takes us now to declarations of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? Okay, thank you for that. Before we go into the minute, I just take an opportunity to ask if there is any member who would like to ask and propose for any site visits. This obviously would be beneficial for everybody, especially for people that's coming in and maybe they staying for an hour or 2 hours waiting on their item coming up, and it's then declared to go for a site. So I'm going to ask any member who would like to propose a site visit. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, convener. Having looked at the agenda today, and there's a number of, well, there's one in particular which I think there's limited numbers have already been on site before, and it did require a site visit, and there's others I think that would probably benefit from having a site visit, and it's going to seem like quite a lot, and I do apologise if people have came this morning expecting to say something, especially for the one as a deputation, but I would like to propose the items, and it seems like quite a lot. 5, 6, 7 and 9 are taken to sites.
So we're just clarifying it's a physical inspection.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you've heard Councillor Bowes. I'm quite happy to support him. So that would be 5, 6, 7 and 9. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Are we agreed to sites for those?
Agreed. It must be very important because Councillor Bowes doesn't usually like to go to sites, so
yeah.
It must be very important, convener.
Okay, so if you just want to take a minute or two just to make sure that you check your agenda, and we'll just clarify. Mr. Henderson, could you just clarify the numbers there? Numbers.
Thank you, convener. We have a motion by Councillor Bowes, seconded by your good self, to go to site visits for a physical inspection of the sites. For items 5, 6, 7 and 9, and I'll maybe read out the applications just for the avoidance of doubt, to make sure we're all working off the same paperwork, etc. So number 5 is extension of dwelling house at Woodholme, Grahamsdyke Avenue, Bowness, for Mr. D. Hebden, and that's reference P230034 FUL. Item 6 is construction of veterinary care facility, dwelling house parking and access, and change of use of land to form exercise area at land to the northwest of Nappy Falls House, Falkirk, for Mr. Brian Allen, and that's P230639 FUL. Item 7 is use of land for sale of motor vehicles, including siting of 2 containers. and construction of fence retrospective at land to the southeast of Tannery Garage, Grangemouth Road, Falkirk, for Mr. Sora Umed, which is P230067 FUL. And item 9 is extension to dwelling house front dormer at 14 Antonine Gate, Allendale, Bonnybridge, Falkirk, FK2 2HS for Mr. William Smithyman, and that's P230314 FUL. So the motion is to have site visits to view the physical characteristics of all of these sites. Can I check the proposed date with my colleague?
That's the 4th of September.
Thank you. That would take place on the 4th of September. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. That takes us now to item 2 in your agenda, which is declaration of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Any declarations? None. Thank you. Takes us to item 3, which is the minute of meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 14th of June 2023, pages 49 in your agenda. Any questions arising from that minute? Can we agree the minute? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 5, as you know, we're going to be going into sites. You've all got that. Yep. That takes us to item 4, which is conversion of office class 4 to house and multiple occupancy at Alexander House, Station Road, Grangemouth for Brava Property. It's a continuation after a site visit. I would say at this stage that I apologise because I was unwell and I could not make the meeting. But since then I have been down and I've had a good look around the area in relation to the issues that was brought up at committee, and I'm quite happy to take part in the decision making. Okay, the report this morning is by Julie Seidel-Gregory and it's pages 10 to 26 in your agenda. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, convener. The Planning Committee considered this application on the 14th of June when it was agreed to continue consideration of the application to allow the committee to carry out a site visit. The site inspection took place on the 14th of August. Members viewed the application building as the car park to the rear of the site and public parking at Union Road, Talbot Street and off the A904. Since the application was last heard by committee, a parking and transportation review was submitted. It advises that the applicant has agreement in principle to lease 6 parking spaces within the Asda car park to the rear of the site, which in addition to the free public parking close to the application site would provide adequate parking to serve the proposed development. It's considered that no new matters are arising which would alter the recommendation to grant planning permission. It's considered that the applicant has now addressed the specific concerns of the Planning Committee in relation to parking. Thank you, convener.
Hey, thank you very much, Julie. I'm going to open it up now for members. Councillor Sinclair. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, convener. Just a couple of questions, really. I think probably should be directed to Julie. Julie, would you be able to? I think part of the discussion at the previous meeting was surrounding parking, car parking. Could you advise how many parking spaces are currently required for the use of that building?
Thank you, councillor. So the existing use of the building, or the former use of the building, was an office development, which in relation to the National Roads Development Guide would generate a parking requirement of 8 spaces. The proposed use as a house of multiple occupancy requires 6 spaces.
Okay, so you can confirm that that's a reduction in parking
Indeed.
Requirement. Okay, so that works out about a 25% reduction in parking required parking spaces. Okay. Do we have an idea of how many parking spaces there are in that specific area of Grangemouth within, say, a 5-10 minute walk?
It'd be difficult to put an exact figure on it without counting all those spaces, but as you'll note from the site inspection, there's probably in excess of 100 spaces, I would guess.
Okay. I did count them, there's over 650 spaces within a 10-minute walk of that specific area. So it works out that the current provision is 1.17% of the available parking. It's now a reduction to 0.87% reduction, and a 0.87% requirement for parking of the available spaces within a 10-minute walk of that particular building. Okay, thank you for that. I just one of the things that is obviously causing slight concern would be the considered, or the opinion there's over provision of HMOs in Grangemouth. Do we know how many HMOs we have across the district and how that compares to other local authorities?
HMO restriction should be restricted by policies where it's considered that there are issues or an over proliferation of HMOs within a particular area or within the district as a whole. There are no policies within the Falkirk Council area, either within the National Planning Framework 4 or our own local plan. This also relates to Grangemouth. There are several HMOs within Grangemouth, but there are no policies which currently restrict the addition of any additional HMOs.
Okay, thank you for that. And we've heard before the HMOs, the definition of HMOs, it's not really a policy matter for this committee, it would be other committees. Where does that rightly sit?
I think the HMOs, there's a number of different legislative requirements covering licensing, planning obviously being one as well, and obviously sometimes other regulations through fire and safety. And I think certainly probably the way forward is obviously there is a monitoring that can be undertaken, but at this point in time, certainly the level of HMOs, where they do exist, are not at a level in this area that would merit a specific policy. That's not to say that can be reviewed, and I think one of the ways forward in the future is we are now started, as you were aware, we've started a new Local Development Plan 3, following the approval of National Planning Framework 4, and therefore it's something we'll be looking at as part of evidence-based gathering for our policy colleagues as well, and that's something that we can maybe look at and something that you can raise as well as a committee and as individual members when the time arises. But certainly in the foreseeable future it can be reviewed again and policies can be considered at that time and then through due process. So there is certainly provision through the Emerging Planning Policy Framework coming up, and obviously we will liaise carefully and collectively with our colleagues in licensing as well. Thank you for that, Mr. Ryan. Thank you for your indulgence, convener. I think from the site visit I got very clear. I think it was very helpful, even although there wasn't as many members that could have attended were there. I think it was helpful to see the area, not just the parking within the area, but also the spaces behind the building that are of some concern. I think there's certainly room for improvement, and I think that's up to the developer to have those discussions with those that they need to discuss that with. I found the site visit helpful from that point of view. I would personally be content to move the recommendations to grant. I would be content to do that, convener.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Sinclair. Have we got a seconder for Councillor Sinclair?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Debate still ongoing. Is there anybody on remote that would like to speak at this stage? Councillor Nimmo, sir.
Yeah, thanks very much, convener. Just a quick point, because obviously I realise I've spoken in relation to this application at previous meetings, just regarding the parking in general. Rather than having an agreement in principle, I would like to see this being noted as a requirement as far as the application is concerned. I wonder if that's possible.
We'll ask that question of officers.
Yes, I think it's something that we could condition. However, it would be a condition, in my view, that would be difficult to enforce or to monitor. If officers were going along to check that those parking spaces were being used for residents, we'd have no way of knowing whether those were occupied by residents or the general public either using the facilities within Grangemouth Town Centre or indeed the Asda car park. But it is certainly information that we could request. Ian, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I was just going to say, I think Julie's correct. I think certainly in terms of the tests of conditions, and there's questions about the the enforceability. I think certainly probably best I would recommend or advise committee that an informative would be the way forward here rather than actually a specific condition.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Nimmo?
No, I'm happy with that, convener. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just go back to the mover of the motion. Would you be quite happy, Councillor Sinclair, to put that informative in?
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable.
And your seconder, would you be happy, sir?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thank you. It's still open, Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, convener. And I didn't make the site visit like yourself. I've been unwell recently, but I did visit the area. And I visit the area quite often to go into the shop. And it's and I take on board the concerns the previous meeting, Councillor Nimmo, and as constituents' concerns. However, as Councillor Sinclair has already alluded to, the amount of parking, and that was the big issue, the amount of parking in the area has been shown to be adequate. And I think for the applicants, I think that was wise for them to go to ASDA to get that assurance, and it's probably pushed over the line. And I'm quite happy to support the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion moved and seconded to agree the recommendations contained within the report with the add-on. Is there the informative? Is there anybody otherwise minded? Can we agree? Agreed. Thank you very much. Now, item 5 is obviously sites. Item 6 is sites. Just clarifying this, Mr. Henderson. Item 7 is sites, so that takes us to item 8, just to clarify. That is correct, thank you. So it's item 8, it's construction of dwelling house and outbuilding amendment to planning permission at Victoria House, Brayface Road, Banknock, Bonnybids for Mr. Martin Shaw. It's pages 62 to 72 on your agenda, and the report is by Julie Seidel-Gregory. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, convener. Please can we have a look at the drawings and the site photographs for this application, if possible, just when I'm introducing the item. So this application relates to the development of a detached dwelling house and an outbuilding at Victoria House in Banknock. This application relates to an amendment of house type on plot 2 of planning permission P19 0190 FUL. It's a 3-house development which is currently under construction, and it appears that 1 house is completed on site. No issues are raised by consultees as summarised in section 4 of your report. 2 representations were received as summarised in section 6 of your report. The application is referred to Planning Committee today because the application is assessed as being contrary to the development plan. The policy assessment is detailed at section 7A.2 to 7A.10 of your report. Specifically, the development is contrary to the overarching aims of the National Planning Framework 4 in relation to tackling the climate and nature crisis, climate mitigation and adaptation, compact urban growth, local living and 20-minute neighbourhoods. Additionally, the development does not accord with any of the criteria where rural housing is supported by the development plan. In this case, it's considered that the planning history of the site provides sufficient justification and weight to the development being granted planning permission. Planning permission is extant, and this application relates to an amendment to house type where the principle of development is already established and ongoing at the site. It is recommended that the Planning Committee grant planning permission subject to the conditions detailed at section 9 of your report. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, open it up for members. Any member like an input? Councillor Kerr, very sensitive issue, but under the circumstances, extenuating circumstances, I'd be quite happy to move the recommendations contained within the report. Councillor Kerr?
Quite happy to second the same, convener, and I'm sure I was going to ask Brent, it's probably the same as the last application it's here because it's outside local development plan.
Yeah,
But I think granting this application will be a godsend to the family.
indeed.
And I hope if it is accepted that Mr. and Mrs. Ledbetter and Ailey has a very successful build.
Echo those sentiments. Councillor Bowsend, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, convener. For the sake of consistency, I think over the last 6 years, I think you've known the one thing I'm always against is individual building in the countryside. I do ask people to wait till I'm finished before they judge what I'm going to say. But however, when it comes to the local development plan, the case has to be compelling to go against the local development plan. I have never heard a case so more compelling than this one to go against the local development plan, and I'm happy to support the proposer and seconder on this. And I also echo the sentiments of Councillor Kerr, and I wish Ailey and the Ledbetters all joy and fun in their new house.
For your input, sir. Councillor. Okay then. So I think we're all singing with this, as they would say, from the same hymn sheet here. As there's a motion been moved and seconded to agree the recommendation contained within the report. Is there anybody otherwise minded? I don't believe so. So we're granting. Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you very
Agreed.
much. That's the last one. Brings us to the end of the committee. I'd just like to thank everybody for their input today.